To Insights on Leadership in Life with your host, Roberta Pickett.
Here we are, more on Insights on Leadership in Life. I'm your host, Roberta Pickett, and I'm here with John Sullivan and Cynthia Dunn-Selph. And we are talking about communication tonight. And over the break, we started talking about what happens when communication breaks down. You know, communication is great. We all attempt to be clear and concise or precise or whatever it is we want to do, but sometimes it just doesn't work, or sometimes people don't do what they say they're going to do. So,
or they just can't hear you.
Well, that's
for whatever reason.
So say more about that.
A lot of times, if people especially are hurting, or someone who's just lost somebody, everybody comes up and says all of these wonderful things, but that person really isn't in the place to hear any of it. All they can do is feel what they feel. And so it's important to recognize where the other person is at, and that communication isn't going to be heard at this time.
And that's so interesting. It's a really good point. And with someone who's maybe lost a loved one, it's more understandable. We may be more sensitive to that, but everybody has something going on in their lives, right?
Have a bad day.
And how do we know that when we're trying to communicate and it's like, I just can't hear you, John, because my head is, with this other thing that's going on with my family right now, right?
Yeah.
So, but we don't go there. We just assume they're just being irresponsible, or they're not paying attention to me.
So I think it's important that no matter what happens on the other side, not to take it personally, right? Because it really doesn't have anything to do with us.
Don Miguel Ruiz, the four agreements.
The four agreements.
Don't take anything personally.
Yes.
But that's a hard one.
It's a very hard one because, like I said, we are all mirrors to each other. So a lot of times we see our own stuff in that communication breakdown.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And we start to match it, and that can cause this kind of mirror back and forth, and it escalates into this thing that we don't want it to be.
And it didn't really even need to be there at all, because it wasn't about that.
Right, exactly.
Ooh. And how do you untangle that web once you've created it, because it didn't really exist to begin with?
Yeah, it takes one person to step back, take the big, deep breath, and look at the big picture and say, wait a minute, what's really happening here? Yeah. And is this really in context of what we're talking about, or is this something else?
You think that happens more with people that we are close to, or do you think it happens with everybody?
I think it happens to everybody. I've had a number of cases where two people that were in business with each other, either as partners or just, vendor kind of things, and something upset one of them, and it wasn't getting communicated over to the other, so it couldn't get fixed, and eventually the business relationship fell apart, the partnership fell apart, and the next thing you know, you have lawsuits, and finally you get some judge to say, well, counsel, why don't you take your clients down to the extra room we've got there and just talk it out. And you go in there, and for the first time, the parties will talk to each other. The lawyers have basically been told by the judge, shut up and let the clients talk, and they air their grievances, and a lot of times you resolve the dispute, and if they'd just talked to each other early on, maybe they could have resolved it then.
I grew up being very shy and very complacent, and maybe that's not the right, compliant maybe. And so if my brothers were arguing or something, I wouldn't want to get amidst the conflict. And I think about that growing up. I've tried to change a little bit over the years, although I think that basic stuff is still there. But I think about if we just set it to begin with, and so many relationships, and what you're saying too, is if you just got it out on the table to begin with, name that elephant that's in the room.
Right, be honest.
Yeah. And be honest.
What is happening where you are. Not try to project or try to make assumptions. We were talking a little bit about assumptions. Yeah. But instead say those I sentences, this is where I'm at, so that the other person can hopefully hear you.
Well, even in negotiations and big diplomacy things, and you have to get to a place of common ground,
Right.
and then build from that common ground out to trying to either collaborate or compromise on
Right.
whatever the issue is. But it's tough when it's personal, and I think that I find it much easier in a business relationship. It's like, okay, but when it's personal stuff, I get more attached.
Yes, that is exactly what it is the attachment to it and those expectations. We get, this is how this person is going to react. This is my expectation for this person. And then
we go back to that assumption thing. Then
Right.
we make assumptions about, oh, that's why they're acting that way, and oh.
instead of just stating, this is
Or
where
asking.
I'm at.
Yeah,
Yes.
and asking, I mean, it feels like this, is that what's going on?
Right, this is my perception. Is this valid?
What about, marketing? I think about marketing is an interesting thing because it's a message. When we're marketing or messaging, we're trying to get a specific message. It's my message that I want to get out, right? I want to tell you how good these flowers are, how well this shirt was made, whatever. It's a message, a specific message. And yet it's sometimes seen in today's world that we're just bombarded with all these half-truths.
That's for sure.
And how do you get around that?
Well, as a member of the public, you just kind of have to filter things out and make your own decisions. I mean, I don't know how many times
responsibility
I've
for
been
it.
watching a television program, particularly sports, and they will have 4 or 5 television ads for different brands of cars with the same thing, them zooming down the highway with the pretty curves and the wind blowing in their hair and that kind of thing. And the cars that I care about don't happen to have those features, but I guess I'm not in the right age group for the advertisers to worry about.
They weren't targeting you.
Right, not the
That's
right
okay.
demographic.
My check cleared the bank when I bought my last car, so they should have been.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting thing too, is we watch media and we feel like sometimes they're not talking to us.
Right.
And they probably aren't. They're talking to another group of people.
Specific targets, which is basically what marketing is, right? We're not marketing these roses to everybody. We're marketing to people who like the color red or who like roses in particular.
Right.
So there is that element that has to be taken into consideration with communication.
And there's nothing
general.
wrong with it on one level, and yet to me, it just seems like today's world, there's a lot of, it almost becomes divisive just the way the marketing is, only telling part of the story.
Yes.
And that's the part it's like, I get it, but I also feel like in some ways it's messing with us.
Well, because it's gone outside the realm of marketing into our journalism and other areas. We're being marketed in these other areas that weren't originally marketing or advertising.
Well, and you started today talking about your background with Rotary and how part of your new role as governor will be messaging and getting the message of Rotary out. Again, there's absolutely, that's what we need to do, and it's a good thing. And we need to know how to reach the people,
To increase your membership.
increase the membership.
Or increase
So
involvement.
it's like, what are the things that are the most effective for people in terms of messages?
Well, I think part of it is personal. This weekend I was at this young professional seminar, and the project that we were working on, the small task, had to do with family involvement in Rotary. And we were really stressing that not just for the young people, that have young children, but also the people that have grandchildren and maybe even great-grandchildren, getting them involved so that the spouse or the kids don't pull the members away when we want to not only involve the member, we want to involve the family, whether it's a social activity or a service project or whatever it might be. We want to make it a group event.
So, first of all, it's knowing who you want to target.
Right.
Another thing is, it's connecting. I think there's something about connecting on the emotional level, right? I mean, it's,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter whether it's a sports emotion or whether it's a relationship emotion, but it's something that where it gets us not just at these roses bloom perfectly level. There's something about the emotional connection to the beauty or something. You know, there's that emotional side that is so important when we have a message to share.
I think it also, again, goes back to that connection and community, that feeling of, oh, if I like these roses, then I'm in this community of rose growers.
Yeah,
or
that's
rose,
true.
you know,
And we
people
share
who-
a value, we share a
Right.
connection and
Yeah.
stuff. And believe it or not, our time is just coming to an end. I'm going to end with, first of all, thanking you both, John and Cynthia, for being here
My
to talk
pleasure.
with us tonight. There was a great quote from Shannon Alder that said, "The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't being said. The art of reading between the lines is a lifelong quest of the wise." And I think attorneys do that, and I think clairvoyants do it.
Most definitely.
So thank you all for being with us here tonight. It's been really fun talking about communication, and I feel like it's, obviously there's so much more that we could have shared about, but we've had a good time, and
Thank you
we're
very
wrapping it
much.
up. Come back and see us next month on Insights on Leadership and Life.